Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the second day of the research conference for the Leadership Alliance National Symposium. I'd like to begin this day by first thanking everyone who attended yesterday and welcome those who are new to us today. Uh, to introduce our keynote speaker for this afternoon, Dr. Camille Burge is an associate professor in the Department of Political Science at Villanova University and the assistant director of the Center for Peace and Justice Education. Prior to joining Villanova in the fall of 2014, she received her Bachelor of Arts in Political Science from Bethune-Cookman University and both master's and PhD's degrees in political science from Vanderbilt University. Her research and teaching areas of expertise lie within political psychology and racial and ethnic politics. Her research has been published in top-tier political science journals and features in Symposium, Politico, the Philadelphia Inquirer, and the New York Times. In 2018, she received the Junior Faculty Award for Excellence in Teaching, and this spring she received the Christian R. and Mary F. Lindback Award for Outstanding Teaching. This is the most distinguished teaching award that Villanova University offers. Dr. Burge has many public lectures on race and ethnicity in American politics and has appeared on multiple segments of CNBC. She can be heard numerous times on National Public Radio also. She was appointed to the 2020 pre-election task force for the American Association of Public Opinion Research, where she works alongside 18 other academics, statisticians, and survey leaders and administrators at Gallup, Pew, NBC News, CBS News, ABC News, CNN, Huffington Post, and other reputable polling organizations, where they work to analyze local, state, and national elections data. She recently signed a contract with ABC News to work on their 2022 and 2024 election night desk team, where she will use rigorous statistical analyses to project election outcomes in the U.S. House elections. Without further ado, I present to you my good friend, Dr. Camille Burge.
Thank you, Don, and thank you for inviting me to speak here today. And thank you all so much for coming. I know this is the last day of the conference, and I'm pretty sure that you're zoomed out, but I want you to know that I appreciate your presence. I'm going to turn off my camera as we get started. As I've been doing Zoom over the last year, I've noticed that the buffering chances decrease substantially when my video is off, but I'll be back with you at the end during the Q&A. So let's get to it. In light of the conference theme, today I'll be speaking from the topic, It's Your Time to Change the World, Dismantling Injustice in Your Small Corner of Academia. When speaking of poets and revolutionaries, the late great essayist, novelist, playwright, poet, and activist James Baldwin stated, "The point is to get your work done, and your work is to change the world." He later went on to say, "You write in order to change the world, knowing perfectly well that you probably can't, but also knowing that literature is indispensable to the world. The world changes according to the way people see it. And if you alter even by a millimeter the way people look at reality, then you can change it." So if the point is to get your work done and your work is to change the world, then saying that we write in order to change the world, and if you alter even by a millimeter the way people look at reality, then you change it, I think this has a great connection to academia, because in academia, that's what we're doing. We're writing and we're producing knowledge that has the potential to change the way that people see or think about a particular phenomenon, to actually change the world. And while graduate school and various programs will equip you with the requisite skill set to make the transition from consuming to producing knowledge, there are a number of other steps that I think we must take to feel empowered to change the world, to do whatever we can to dismantle injustice in our small corner of academia. So step one, we have to overcome imposter syndrome and stereotype threat. If you've never heard these terms before, imposter syndrome is a psychological term referring to a pattern of behavior where people doubt their accomplishments and have a persistent, often internalized fear of being exposed as a fraud. This is not an actual disorder. The term was coined by clinical psychologists Pauline Clance and Suzanne Imes in 1978 when they found that despite having adequate external evidence of accomplishments, people with imposter syndrome remained convinced that they don't deserve the success they have. To put it simply, imposter syndrome is the experience of feeling like a phony. You feel as though at any moment you're going to be found out as a fraud, like you don't belong where you are, and you only got there through something like dumb luck. And if you're a racial and ethnic minority, maybe a diversity hire. It can be debilitating, causing stress, anxiety, low self-confidence, shame, and in some cases, even depression. But in addition to imposter syndrome, racial and ethnic minorities and women, and those at its many intersections, are fighting another battle, especially pertaining to stereotype threat. And stereotype threat is defined as a socially premised psychological threat that arises when one is in a situation or doing something for which a negative stereotype about one's group applies. According to stereotype threat, members of a marginalized group acknowledge that a negative stereotype exists in reference to their group, and they demonstrate apprehension about confirming the negative stereotype by engaging in particular activities. It arises in situations where a negative stereotype is especially relevant to evaluating performance. So thinking about stereotypes surrounding things like African Americans and performance on standardized tests, women and math, and the list goes on and on. Thus, people in stereotype threatening situations appear to be thinking about the stereotype and its implications. In addition, they're also contending with the stereotype and the extra burden of possibly confirming it. So what happens if you're a Black person and get to a standardized test and you know the stereotype associated with that group is that they're not great at taking standardized tests? You get to the test, you start to freak out, you question your abilities, resulting in a self-confirming, spiral of low expectations, hindered performance, and threatened belongingness. And this really happens for any group for which there's a stereotype. How can you cope with this? How can you overcome it? The ways to cope with both are fairly similar, but I'm going to give you a few ways. As it pertains to imposter syndrome, you have to start by acknowledging your feelings. The first step to recovery is admitting that you have a problem. You also need to stop comparing yourself to others. There's a great gospel song by Jonathan McReynolds called Comparison Kills. And the point is that we're constantly comparing ourselves to others, constantly critiquing what we do, what we don't have, what we lack. And this becomes especially destructive when you're in academia and you start comparing things like publications, media hits, invited lectures, books, conference presentations. But you just need to remember that you belong. You're not an imposter. You're not a fraud. You're intellectually gifted. You belong in the program that you're in. You deserve the future you see, and you are capable of doing all of those things. That some people, even though some people will try to make you believe that you don't belong because of your race, ethnicity, gender, sexuality, or your first language, just remember that you do, that you've earned your seat at the table. And in many instances, you've probably worked even harder than most people realize to get there. When thinking about stereotype threat, there are a number of things that you can do. I'm only listing 3. I mean, there are lists upon lists of things. But again, becoming aware, recognizing when or if you get nervous, anxious, or afraid when it comes to completing various tasks, and ask yourself, why are these feelings coming up for me? What's going on? Having visible, accessible, and relevant role models are also important. Thinking about their success can help you visualize your own. This is coming from some work in psychology, where before some Black students were given an actual test, They were asked to think about Barack Obama and his success and reflect on it. And the individuals that did that task versus the ones who didn't actually scored quite higher than the individuals who didn't do that task. And the same occurred for exemplars for other groups. Another method is to buffer the threat through shifting self perceptions to positive group identities or self affirmation. In another experiment, some psychology scholars found that Asian women underperformed on math tests when they were reminded of their gender identity, but not when they were reminded of their Asian identity. And this is because we're talking about stereotypes and stereotype threat. Asian individuals are stereotypically seen as good at math. In the same way, many of us belong to a few different groups. It's sometimes worth shifting the focus toward the ones which give you strength. Other research that I really enjoy talks about writing out the things you love about yourself or the things that are positive about you before undertaking a stressful task or before doing something that has perhaps a negative stereotype attached to a group with which you identify with. I tell my students to do this all of the time, especially my students of color and my women. And lo and behold, they always tell me, even on the practice test, they end up scoring higher than they did had they not completed the task for the LSAT and the GRE. But I think for both, at the end of the day, you just have to remember this. You're here for a reason. In this job, your business, your life, you're worthy. You're better than you think you are. You're smarter than you think you are. You know more than you give yourself credit for. And you need to remember that. And not just remember that, but remind yourself of that as often as you need to. So, step 2, take care of your mental health. Mental health is wealth. And in this current moment, we're seeing individuals on the highest stages of athletics talking about their struggles with mental health and what they need to do to navigate it. Anxiety, depression, and many other mental health conditions are real. And these things are especially common, not only in academia, but also in industry. And you have to be aware of whatever conditions might be plaguing you because it increases your risk for eating disorders, self-esteem issues, insomnia, inability to perform well academically, being unable to manage healthy relationships, increasing your risk for suicide, along with many other factors. I can't even begin to tell you the number of students I have that struggle with depression, and their parents absolutely do not believe them. And this becomes far more exaggerated when I'm talking about my students that are racial and ethnic minorities. Most of their parents say, they'll be fine. It's not an issue. They just need to relax. This is not an appropriate response. We have to take any symptoms that you might have and their effects seriously. And so I just want to spend a little time today talking about high functioning depression, also being real. And this is something that a great deal of high achievers suffer from. You're attending an academic conference on Zoom in the summer. Need I say more about your high achieving status? The diagnosis for high functioning depression is officially called persistent depressive disorder, or PDD. And someone struggling with PDD experiences many of the symptoms of depression, but much less severely. This allows the person to be able to function mostly normally, going to work or school, performing well, keeping up with responsibilities at home, and engaging in most social activities. But Dr. Eva Stubbits, she's a clinical psychologist, she said people are using the term to describe those who are doing well academically or professionally. On the outside, they seem to be successful, but secretly they feel sadness inside. So you might be killing it on the exterior, but inside, you know that things are amiss. So just making sure that you're aware of these things, of your mental health, and do whatever you can to manage it and work through it so that you can be fully present as you seek to change the world. I always tell people, I love my therapist. And going to therapy was the best decision that I could have ever made as an adult. Step 3, pursue research, teaching, and service commitments that align with your interests and are purposeful. So when you're in graduate school, you usually get to hang out and have conversations with visiting scholars from other institutions. You get to ask them all kinds of questions. One question that was really popular among first years and second years involved advice about picking a topic, picking your research topic, your dissertation topic. What should you do? Why? And there's an amazing political science scholar by the name of Jane Junn who said 7 important words to my cohort during my first year in grad school when asked about the topics they should pursue. She literally said, F the market, do what you love. We were all, clutched our pearls and took a deep sigh, shocked that an academic would sit there and curse so candidly. But once we all got over it, we listened. And the point that she was trying to make was that some people will encourage you to pursue topics that are hot or popular for the moment, but the market can change at any point in time. So it's best to do what you love and what you're passionate about. Even if those interests involve marginalized communities that you might be a part of, so be it. Don't allow anyone to tell you that your work is subjective because you share that identity or because it focuses on too narrow of a topic or too narrow of a group, especially when the overwhelming majority of most prior research on numerous topics have focused explicitly on cisgender white people. You also don't necessarily have to attend a protest to be an activist. Your form of resistance can happen with the pen or with the keyboard. You can use your scholarship to be an activist, writing about inequality and different ways to overcome it, understanding the lived experience of individuals in marginalized communities and bringing it to the fore. As Dawn mentioned, I study political psychology and racial and ethnic politics. And I focus on 3 key areas: Black-white relations, collective experiences of emotions, and intersectionality, especially thinking about race and gender, race and sexuality, and colorism, and how all of these things shape our public opinion and political decision-making. I write to better understand the complexities I observe in everyday life and to help explain why we're seeing these responses in the present day. In line with those research commitments, I also teach on topics related to marginalized communities and experiences. It's not lost on me that 4 generations ago, my ancestors could be killed for reading and writing. Not only do I get paid to do both, but I'm able to teach people about racism, difference, and their effects. I'm able to provide facts in a public platform and raise awareness on various issues by sharing others' truths in my classroom. I'm able to further develop compassion and generosity within my students. I seek transformation in my classroom. It's what I wrote my entire teaching essay on this year for the Lindback Award. My goal is not to radicalize individuals, but to educate them so they can at least think twice or 3 times before they might act in maybe prejudicial and or discriminatory ways. At the end of every race and politics course that I teach on the undergrad and grad level, someone always approaches me and says, the worst thing about this class is I can't unsee what I've learned. Or, this class has changed me. And it's those kinds of things that are revolutionary. Still on step 3, pursuing research, teaching, and service commitments that align with your interests and are purposeful. There are many ways to give back to people in your communities, and those will depend on your discipline, but really any initiative involving diversity, equity, and inclusion will benefit a number of different communities. I have a younger cousin named Brent Gaddis. He was an engineering major in undergrad and now works as an electrical design and analysis engineer for Boeing. He's in industry. But he, along with a few of his friends from undergrad, started a nonprofit called STEM Force, in which they say they combine family, opportunity, resilience, commitment, and excellence by exposing underrepresented students ages 6 through 18 to STEM. Again, he's in industry, he's not in academia, and yet still finding an incredible way to give back to marginalized communities. I really do feel as though diversity, equity, and inclusion work gives you a transferable language and skill set that can be used in both academia and private practice. The only service commitments I'm involved in now revolve around DEI, diversity initiatives. I'm the assistant director for the Center for Peace and Justice Education. I'm on the Equitas Task Force on Race at Villanova and work especially heavily on campus climate metrics. So all of the surveys that we administer to students, faculty, and staff to understand their lived experience and how to improve that. Outside of Nova, I have a small side hustle related to corporate DEI trainings, which might be a conversation for another day or the Q&A. But in all of these capacities, I'm using my research area expertise to provide factual information and my methodological training in survey research and development to help ensure that everyone's voice is being represented. I've lumped my research and teaching interests into an activist-oriented framework for service. And you can too. Step 4, always put your best foot forward. Always, 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 always times 5 million, because people are always watching, listening, and paying attention to you. They're paying attention to you in the classroom, at conferences, when you're on the job market. They're paying attention to your social media posts. People are taking all of these things in. So take every opportunity that you have to speak seriously, because you never know what kinds of connections or the kinds of impact that these things will have for the folks that are watching you. I have a few short personal stories, and then I'll continue on with the steps. So the first is about my journey to tenure. I can remember in the fall that I went up for tenure, I was attending our national conference, and I was pulled over by a senior race and politics scholar. Mind you, I'd never had any real meaningful interaction with this particular person. And they said, everyone knows you're going up for tenure. We've been watching you since you were at Vanderbilt, and you've done a great job. You'll be fine when you go up. I was like, who's been watching me? Who is everyone and what and where? Like, what does any of that mean? But she was right. I ultimately did end up getting tenure, but did not know the depth to which I had been being observed over time, from the time that I started in my grad program, to the time that I ultimately ended up going up for tenure, which is about 12 years. Another place, you're being watched in your courses. So Dawn talked about my opportunity with APOR, but the way that this came about is because of a class I took when I was in graduate school. It was my maximum likelihood estimation, or we call stats 3, and I did well in it. That my last substantive course, I think I took that course in 2011 or 2012. Fast forward to last year, I get an email from the professor of that course, Josh Clinton, asking me to serve on the 2020 pre-election polling task force for the American Association for Public Opinion Research, where I got to work alongside incredible pollsters and academics to come up with ways to understand and improve polling and interpret what we saw in the polling environment before the election. There were plenty of people in the class with me, and yet I was selected, right? So taking your classwork seriously, keeping up good relationships with those people. The third story involves a presentation I gave at a conference, much like you're doing right now. I presented a chapter of my dissertation, and my discussant was a really amazing political psych scholar by the name of Chris Karpowitz. He gave me great feedback on the chapter. I later invited him to my book conference, which is where you get feedback on what to do to make your manuscript publishable. And now we're working on an intro to political psychology textbook together, all from a conference presentation, right? And taking it seriously, not waiting until the last minute to get my materials together, which we always do in academia, but taking it seriously, writing a good paper, practicing. My last example, which may be the most important to date, I'm not sure yet, but when I was interviewing for jobs, when I was on the job market, I had a great time. I interviewed at Wesleyan University, loved the faculty there. I ended up getting an offer there and an offer at Villanova, but I turned down Wesleyan's offer. But I always kept in touch with the faculty at Wesleyan. I connected with them at conferences, coffees, lunches, happy hours. I would go to their conference presentations, just to check in and just to let them know that I was still around. So earlier in this year, I get an email from one of those faculty members that interviewed me when I was on the job market that I've been keeping in touch with, asking me if I'd be interested in doing election night work for ABC News. I was like, yeah. Who's not? So in April, I signed a contract to be on the election night decision desk team, where I'll be in the back room, analyzing data on House elections and predicting election outcomes. And why is all of this important? Because once you're in the door, you can bring your unique perspective, right? But none of this would have really happened had I not been taking things like seriously, especially when you're on the job market and people get interviews at places or they're like, I'll never come here, I'm just going, right? You never know what can happen in the future. Step 5, use your network. It was Tim Sanders who said your network is your net worth. Who you know can significantly increase your opportunities and wealth. You have a tremendous starting point here. Do not be afraid to send emails to folks and ask for assistance, help, time, whatever the case might be. There are so many people that want to help you. All you have to do is ask. When people give you the card, use the information on it. When you're attending these sessions and they say, no, email me or contact me, do it. Because most people don't. But there are plenty of people that want to help you achieve whatever goals it is that you have. My final step is never forget your ancestors. Never forget that you're here because you stand on the shoulders of giants. Every year, the Center for Peace and Justice Education at Nova brings in a guest speaker to celebrate the life and legacy of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. In January of 2018, we had the privilege of learning from civil rights activist Diane Nash. Diane Nash is most well known for being the chairperson of the student sit-in movement in 1960 in Nashville, Tennessee, where she organized many protests that ultimately led to the desegregation of Nashville's lunch counters. It was because of her tireless efforts and negotiations with local government that on May 10th, 1960, Nashville, Tennessee became the first major Southern city in America to formally desegregate lunch counters. During her talk about how to move forward and agitate in love and positive energy, she stated something that has stuck with me. She said, "My contemporaries and I had you in mind when we were marching. We knew that we might never see the equality we hoped for, but we wanted it for you." And so the reason that we're all here right now, regardless of your history, is because our ancestors and our predecessors, they never gave up. Regardless of what their situation was, they never gave up on the hope for a better future for the generations to come. We're able to do the things that we love because of the many sacrifices of the people that came before us. So don't take these opportunities for granted. I attended Bethune-Cookman University, a historically Black college for undergrad, and Vanderbilt for my MA and PhD. It's not lost on me that I attended a school that was founded by a Black woman, Dr. Mary McLeod Bethune, whose parents were enslaved, and then Vanderbilt, a school whose founder bailed out the president of the Confederate States of America. But the only reason I was able to do that is because of all the folks that came before me. All of the people that were spit on, that were abused, that had their lives threatened just for wanting to get an education at a particular school. The fact that today I can walk around on Villanova's campus, a school that was initially only open to men, and whose first Black faculty that were hired are still actively employed, is nothing short of miraculous. I'm able to do the work I do because of their sacrifices. So we can never forget that. Here's another great quote by Baldwin. If you can't tell, I've been reading a ton of his works this summer. He said, "You think your pain and your heartbreak are unprecedented in the history of the world. But then you read. It was books that taught me that the things that tormented me most were the very things that connected me with all the people who were alive, who had ever been alive." Draw your strength from your ancestors because you're going to need it when you feel like giving up. You can't give up. The people before us didn't give up, and now it's on us to keep moving things forward. So in conclusion, I'm going to circle back to the quotes that I gave you at the beginning. The point is to get your work done, and your work is to change the world. You write in order to change the world, knowing perfectly well that you probably can't, but also knowing that literature is indispensable to the world. The world changes according to the way people see it. And if you alter even by a millimeter the way people look at reality, then you can change it. This is what we're doing in academia as we produce knowledge. We have the potential to change the way people see and view the world. I gave you 6 steps to conquer your fears and to get in that mode of dismantling injustice in your small corner of academia. Step 1, overcome that imposter syndrome and stereotype threat. If you can't overcome it, recognize that it's there and work through it. Step 2, take care of your mental health. Step 3, pursue research, teaching, and service commitments that align with your interests and are purposeful. Step 4, always put your best foot forward. Step 5, use your network. Step 6, never forget your ancestors. Never forget the shoulders of the giants that you stand on. And if no one's told you this lately, I just want to say, even though we haven't met, that I believe in you. Whatever contribution you have brewing in your head, I can assure you that academia and or industry needs it. I believe in you. Everyone on this call that's part of this organization believes in you, that you can do this, that you can get these degrees and not just retreat to your ivory tower, but that you can use them to make meaningful changes in the world. Thank you so much for your time and attention. If you'd like any additional information about me, please feel free to visit my website. And I'm looking forward to any questions that you all might have. So thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Burge. You shared so much with us. And yeah, my little pen was just going while you were speaking. Uh, for those who are the participants in our audience, if you have any questions, please type your questions in the Q&A box by clicking on the Q&A box that's probably right beside the participants icon on your computer. And the first question that we have is from Sarah Hernandez, who asks, with all that you're doing and advocating for, how do you manage and promote your mental health? How do you encourage students to take care of theirs?
Yes, thank you for this question. Therapy, therapy. I love my therapist. I started going to therapy not while I was in grad school, even though pretty much everyone in my program was using, and Don, you can speak to this, knowing about the rate of graduate students at Vanderbilt that are attending or that are doing, therapy sessions to attend to their mental health. I would say that like at least 75% of individuals in my grad program were in therapy. I did not go at that point in time. But when I got on the tenure track and I was just feeling too overwhelmed, I was like, I feel like I need to talk to someone about this. So the way that I manage my personal mental health is I talk to my wonderful therapist every other week. And am able to have her as a sounding board. She is also an academic, and so she understands that side of life and works at a university as well. And I encourage my students to do the same thing, whatever it is that is going to free them up. I feel like one of the things that I definitely do in my classes is I provide space for people to talk about mental health conditions by also acknowledging, my own issues. I can remember that over the past year, I was on a Zoom with my grad class and then my undergrad class a few weeks after that. And I was like, I just have to apologize to you guys. Like, I'm not feeling great today. Like, today is a sad, like, depression filled day. And I'm not giving you my best, but I'm here. And I was like, and that's the point, is to just show up and to try every single day. And so my students know that they can come and talk to me about any issues that they're having. We can talk and cry on Zoom together. Whatever they might need, I am there for them 110%. But I definitely encourage, I definitely promote mental health by trying to reduce the stigma surrounding it, by trying to like normalize it, because everybody's going through something, whether they mention it out loud or not. And I feel that by just being like honest, not telling all your business, right? But just by acknowledging like today's not a great day, and being willing to say that, I think that gets you a lot more. Uh, it makes you a lot more accessible to students and like real, so that they can understand that you're going through things too, and we're all just human.
Yeah, I can tell you from my grad school years at MIT many, many, many years ago, there were quite a number of students of color who use those services because they're really important. As I've heard you mention in other talks, this whole grad school journey is something, the PhD makes you a knowledge creator. And
Mhm.
creating knowledge that you're adding to the world is not a small task. And yeah, you must take care of your mental health. So let me go on to the next question from Ghazal Hamid, who asks, how important is computer science and or data science training for political science students interested in pursuing research in election systems and policies? And I know
Yeah.
you have very strong feelings about
Tons of thoughts about this. Listen, it's never a bad thing to build up your methodological toolbox for whatever discipline that you might be in, particularly for the social sciences and for those that are interested in doing like elections and survey research work. So I started this work when I was in graduate school, learning how to use Qualtrics. I primarily use Qualtrics to program my own survey experiments and then to program my own surveys as well. And then Qualtrics as the platform then recruits the participants for me. So I started that training in grad school, but you can do that on your own, right? You can look up, you can go to Qualtrics website. They have an extensive list of classes you can take for training. I went to ICPSR when I was an undergrad as well, the Inter-University Consortium for Political and Social Research at the University of Michigan. I went for 2 summers where I took various courses related to methods and quantitative methodology. So it's never a bad time to do something every year to try and keep that toolbox relevant, try and keep it up to date. I know this summer, the thing that I did was learn R. So I usually use Stata, but this summer I'm noticing that a lot of the folks that are doing, survey research, especially on these higher levels, are less likely to use Stata, more likely to use R. All right, I need to, get that back in my toolbox. I had the chance to learn it in grad school, but because at that time there were only a few folks using R, like folks at study institutions and Congress and the hardcore institutionalists. I was like, I'm a public opinion behavior person. I don't need to do that. And my dissertation chair said the same thing. But now as it's become more popular, like you need to have that in your toolbox. So any programs, any data science, any additional courses you can take, any certificates that you can get, especially while you're currently enrolled, and that would be a free option for you, do it. Because that's just another thing that you can put on your CV or on your resume, and it makes you have more transferable skills outside of just academia. Not just academia, but to other folks who are like, you just debate theories on elections and behavior all day. What else can you do? You're like, well, I can do all of these things methodologically and have a nice day. So it helps. It definitely helps. It's not going to hurt you ever to enrich the methodological training that you have or the quant training that you have.
Thank you. Our next question is from Cora Barron, and the question is, did you go from undergraduate to graduate school right away? Did you take a gap year? And how did you go about making this decision, whichever you chose?
Yeah, I went straight through from undergrad to the MA PhD program. Knowing what I know now, would I do that again? Maybe not, but here's how I got to my decision. So I went to a PhD exposure program at Duke University, the Ralph Bunche Summer Institute, that I got into the summer after my junior year of college. Up until that point, I was going to law school. I love public speaking, debate team, mock trial, model UN, student government, president, like all the leadership stuff. I was like, oh yeah, political science as a major. I'm going to law school. And then I got into this PhD exposure program. And I was like, or I can go and study political science and I can talk about race. Like I like talking about race and politics. I like talking about American government, pretty decent at stats, love math. And so literally within that summer, I completely changed courses. I canceled my LSAT prep class. I took a GRE prep class, and then I took the GRE a few months later and started to apply to MA PhD programs. And that is what happened? That's my story. It's not miraculous. I guess the miraculous part would be I'm a religious person and spiritual person. And so I was in a moment of crisis and I went home. I was home after the Duke program ended. And Joyce Meyer was on. This was earlier on. And when my parents used to watch her every night when I was growing up. And so she said, don't be so locked into your plan that God can't bless you. And I was like, well, that's my sign. I was like, that seems like that's going to be my sign. So I, changed plans. I studied as hard as I could for the GRE in like 3 months. I took it. I applied to MA PhD programs. And then I crossed my fingers and wished for the best. And I feel like I've been doing well on this track. So I'm grateful that I made that decision.
Okay, thank you. You're generating a lot of questions. The next question is from, and I hope I don't mess up the name, Rocio Rivera Crespo. And the question is, can you talk about how you mix psychology and politics? Have you ever received any backlash for doing so?
Absolutely backlash. But to begin the answer to that question, political psychology is a subfield within political science. So it's not like Camille created the subfield. Folks have been doing this work, especially since the late 70s, but more concretized as a subfield and even a section for the American Political Science Association since like the 1980s, right? So I didn't invent this mixing of worlds. This mixing of worlds was already in existence. And yes, plenty of backlash. And not necessarily from the political science folks, primarily from the psychology folks. So if there's any psychology scholars out there, I still love you anyways. But mainly from people who study psychology that are like, what is political psychology? Like, I've never heard of this. You're making things up. And like, actually, it's a subfield. Actually, there's plenty of Oxford handbooks on political psychology. But the way that I mix psychology and politics is that I use psychology theories to help explain public opinion and political decision making. So a lot of the psychology research really gets us under the hood about like why it is that people make the decisions that they make. How is it that they relate to people and interact with people? What's going on in their brains? What's happening cognitively as they're making these decisions? What's happening emotionally as they're making these decisions? Which I feel like it's really important to understand those kinds of things, especially in politics, right? Especially when it comes to thinking about who we're voting for, when it comes to thinking about the policies that we support and why we support those policies. So primarily using psychology theories to explain political phenomenon and using a great deal. I use mixed methods. I talked a lot about survey research, but I also do focus group studies. I try and use existing survey research. I try as much as I can to, triangulate my methods so that I can tell a comprehensive story about a particular phenomenon. So that nothing is ever bulletproof. But if you're telling the same story with multiple methods and you keep coming up with the same reaction, it's really hard for people to try and refute your findings.
Thank you. The next question comes from Deepanjali Chowdhury, and she says, thank you so much, Dr. Burge, for this empowering and interesting presentation. As a minority woman who is in STEM that goes to a PWI, what are some of the things that someone like me could do to overcome the imposter syndrome and dealing with the remembering my ancestors?
Listen, I was saying before the call started when we were talking in the chat, imposter syndrome is not going to go anywhere. You can try as much as you can, like, I belong, I believe in myself, I can do this. But at some point, you're going to feel, not always, you're going to feel like you don't belong, like you're a fraud. Dynamics in the classroom, especially when you're sitting in graduate seminar, also don't help, right? When you have individuals that might shut down the statements that you make or harshly critique your statements more so than they do other individuals. So I think for me, I did a few different things. I guess the ones that I can, say here. But most importantly, I had an outlet outside of my grad program. Because what tends to happen when you're in a grad program is that the people that you hang out with are all in your program. So you're sharing all of your personal business with the people that you hang out with. So not only are you now being judged for your performance in class, you're also being judged for some of the decisions that you might make. And so all of that is playing out in the seminar room, or in the hallways as you're walking, to and from classes or to and from your office or wherever you're walking to. So I had a really large outlet. I was involved in the organizations on campus that cater to students of color or multicultural students. I was in Nashville, that's where Vanderbilt is. So there's a ton of great churches. So I found me a great church home and got really active. I'm a classically trained vocalist. I've been singing like opera style music and classical pieces since I was about 11 for various choirs. So joined the choir, also was doing some more opera workshop oriented stuff. So finding my outlet in the things that I know that I'm great at: socializing, singing, happy hour, brunch, and doing those things where I don't necessarily, feel like a fraud, but obviously also recognizing those times when you start to feel yourself getting shaky, when you start to feel that anxiety building up and asking yourself, like, why is this happening? Like, what is going on? Recognizing those moments and knowing that that's what's happening, so you can say, not today. Like, I deserve to be here just as much as the next person. Like, I am equipped, I am good enough, I got in here just like everyone else, right? Really being in touch with, who you are, why you're here, being purpose driven. I can tell you more things offline if you want. Send me an email.
Thank you. Thank you. I just remember the wonderful story you told me about singing Broadway tunes on your job interview.
Yes.
So,
It was an
is
entire.
that something you want to share, or am I oversharing?
There are other questions, and if there's time at the end, I'll share it.
Sure. The next one is actually not a question, it's a comment from one of the Leadership Alliance doctoral scholars, Dr. Teresa Ramirez, and she says, I love what you share with the students, and you got so right. We need to believe in ourselves. We often put our own barriers that prevent us sometimes to move forward. But what I've learned is to try new things out of my comfort zone and to believe in my capabilities. Thank you so much for your positive messages.
Thank you.
And the next is a question from Evan Sakuma. Evan asked, did you encounter professors or faculty in higher education who tried to gatekeeper you from the PhD? I've heard horror stories about those. If so, how did you overcome this?
How much time do we have? No, oh gosh, well, this is being recorded. So no, that never happened to me before. I've never heard anything like that. Listen, there are going to be faculty members that you get along with that are like, to date, your people that you continue to text, like all of these years later, that I continue to have a really great relationship with. And then there are going to be faculty members that just don't like you. And there's nothing that you can do about it. There's nothing you can do to change their mind. It doesn't matter how well you perform in class. They're just not on your team. And so what you have to do is figure out relatively early on who those people are, and figure out who the folks are that are in your corner. And when the doors are closed during comprehensive exam time, who's going to be behind those doors? Who's going to go to bat for you? And so that is all I will say about that. Also recognizing that one of the things I don't think we talk enough about, I know that I didn't realize going into grad school, is just how fragile some academics are. And so you just have to be really careful of the things that you say in a number of different instances. So right now I'm saying you can email me. I think it was Evan. Send me an email. We can jump on Zoom. Camille.burge@villanova.edu. More stories, but there are plenty of people that have issues with faculty. You're not going to go through a PhD program or an MA program and get along with every single faculty person. I've never known that to be the case of anyone that I know that has advanced degrees. But the task for you is to figure out who your people are.
And
And
here's one from J. Miguel Fonticella. Aside from joining supported academic groups such as SACNAS, what encouragement or advice would you want to give to Indigenous students who do not see themselves represented nearly at all in the field of research or in academia?
Man, this is the truth. Especially, I know one of the things I teach on when I teach on Indigenous peoples of America and their politics, they're such a small, like they're literally 3 to 5 people in political science that work on the politics of these individuals. And it's like, shouldn't we know? Haven't they been here the longest? Like, what is going on? But it is really difficult to find individuals that are in your community. I would encourage you to look online for various faculty members that are involved in this research. Like a quick way to do this, right? If you know the like various national conferences, so like APSA, American Political Science Association, ASA, the American Sociological Association, you can pretty quickly go through any of their like conference programs. It's like a quick way to do it if you don't know anyone, right? Like if you're trying to find people, if you're trying to find mentors with this shared identity, go through and like look for their subsections on like race or Indigenous peoples, or type in those phrases. Look for the people that are working on this research, right? And then Google them and maybe stalk them on social media. But look them up, Google them, see what they're working on, see how they identify, and reach out to them, right? And tell them who you are. Ask faculty members that are in your current department, do they happen to know someone that might know this individual, because you're interested in just speaking to them, or you can reach out to them on your own. I've gotten plenty of emails from current graduate students, undergraduate students that I've never encountered that are like, you're a Black woman, I'm a Black woman in academia, I'd just love to have a conversation with you, like in a little bit more about their story. And I email back and I'm like, sure, no problem. Like, let's have this conversation. You're already part of a network that has a large amount of diverse scholars. Talk to these individuals, maybe as a first stop. If you don't feel comfortable going to conference panels and presentations and looking through that way, talk to these folks as a first stop. They have plentiful networks. They can connect you with 1 or 2 people who can probably connect you to others. And so that's how you can start to build up that network or that group of mentors, because you're absolutely right. Completely underrepresented in terms of Indigenous peoples in America. But I feel like there are things that you can do and resources, especially with this organization, that can at least help you find the appropriate mentors that you need so you can make it.
Okay, here's a question from Azrael. Have you had any struggles with saying no to a superior, especially within the context of graduate school, where you are essentially at the mercy of people who hold more power than you? Are there any strategies that you have to keep yourself from overloading yourself?
Oh yeah. So much harder to do in graduate school than when you're on the tenure track, but still really hard when you're on the tenure track, particularly when you don't have tenure, because you don't want to make any of your senior faculty angry. Or just like when you're in graduate school, you don't want to make the folks on your committee or other faculty members in the department upset, or make it seem like you're not working hard or that you don't care about other things. So the best advice I can give you, when people ask me to do stuff now, I send them a list of all of the things that I'm doing. I'm like, oh my gosh, thank you so much for thinking of me for this. Unfortunately, I'm incredibly busy at the moment. And I list, here are all of the commitments that I have. I put it in a list. And while I would love to help you with this, because it's so important and so core to what I believe in, so vital to what I believe in, I can't help you right now. But if you need help on this committee in a couple of years, please be sure to reach out to me. But right now, I just can't do it. And especially when you're in grad school, at any point when you're in the classwork phase or the dissertation writing phase, you can say things like, here are all of my commitments that I currently have, and I just don't want to sacrifice my academic performance at this point in time. I already know that I'm spending a great deal of time on these service commitments, and while I would love to help you, I just can't help in that capacity right now. Is there anything else that I might be able to do to assist you? So that we can still work together. I just know I don't want to overextend myself. But thank you so much for thinking of me. like there's language you can use. And my favorite phrase is like, oh, this is great, I just can't do it right now. And like, the end. but also like, here are the other things I have going on. And usually when I do that, when I list those things out to people, they're like, oh my gosh, I had no idea that you were involved in all of these committees. I had no, right. But now you know, so leave me alone.
So our final question comes from Diana Milk Batista. And Diana asks, could you talk more about your work in corporate DEI training that you mentioned in your presentation?
Oh, yes. So again, having that transferable skill set that you can, use and take other places. There are a number of corporations and organizations that are trying to figure out like how they can be more inclusive, how they can be more diverse, what they need to do to help promote more diverse candidates, especially into the C-suite. And so most companies historically have like an implicit bias training once a year where they invite someone from the outside to come and give a training. But what a lot of different corporations are finding is that that one training is not as satisfactory now in this current political moment as it may have been in terms of ticking a box. And they're thinking about, wanting to do more to help improve the function of their corporations. And so folks will like reach out and say like, can you come and give a workshop or two? So some of the things that I do, like I work with HR in not a lot, but in a few corporations where I help them to put together, like surveys and questionnaires where they can better understand the lived experiences of their employees. Because some of the surveys that they administer now aren't doing that. Question wording, question ordering, understanding what's going on, and then having conversations about what's actually happening in the company, having multiple conversations, multiple events, not just one training, about race in America, and equipping people with historical facts. And so that's just some of the work that I've been doing there lately. That's kept me pretty busy all summer, but just another way in which you can apply your skills to help individuals that might be outside of your institution.
Thank you. So as we come to the final seconds of this afternoon's keynote address, I want again, on behalf of the Leadership Alliance and the Leadership Alliance National Symposium Planning Committee, thank you again for agreeing to be our keynote speaker for this afternoon and giving a wonderful presentation that all of our members and guests have enjoyed. To all the students who are going to be presenting this afternoon, we wish you the best of luck. And I know that I will be attending some of your talks. I'm Don Brunson. I'm the chair of the Leadership Alliance Symposium Planning Committee. And again, we thank you all and wish you all have a great rest of your afternoon. Bye-bye.
Thank you.